Virginia Woolf. Writing is an art, and to invoke it, we need ideas. And what better tool for ideas than reading? To quote Jhumpa Lahiri, that's the thing about books. They let you travel without moving feet. As a person of literature, we must understand how influential our words can be, how it can shape hundreds and thousands of minds. This session is what we call the need of the hour, since academic writing is the niche of our course. Good evening to one and all present here. We, the students of Mitraksha, the English Literary Society of Kalindi College, would like to once again extend a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Dr. Poulomi Das, our principal, all the teachers and students present with us. Thank you for taking your time and being present with us today. I now invite Ms. Chaiti Das to present the welcome note.
A very warm welcome to Kalindi College and to this session. I've heard about your last session, which I unfortunately couldn't attend, and I know it was a great success. And it is also quite an opportune moment for this kind of an activity because of the pandemic. Primarily, I feel students have really lost out on honing their skills. In any case, our literature courses do not prepare us for this. It's assumed that we know it. But gradually, it has become an important part of the syllabus, though it still does not take center stage. But, I think if we can learn this craft and art, as you call it, then we can actually make the most of many other things that we learn in this course. So and like I said, the pandemic is something that makes this so much more relevant and important. And I'm very glad that someone like you has accepted our invitation and chosen to do this for our students. I'm sure they learn a lot from it. I wish you all the best, and I also look forward to listening to you. Your credentials are, something that are there for all to see, not only through, your what we know as part of your CV, but also, in the way that you do it and the way that you impart your skill is a testament to, the kind of difference that you can make to our students. So thank you very much for coming. We are all very eager to listen to you. And I'm sure all our students and, our teachers also, including me, we shall all benefit from this session. Thank you very much. And
Thank you so much.
we're looking forward to a great session. Thank you.
That's too much of trust. I'll try to live up to your expectations. Thank you so much.
I'm sure you will.
For your kind words. Dr. Poulomi Das is a critical writing faculty at the Ashoka University, where she teaches the Young India Fellows. She is also a visiting faculty at the Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University, DSEU. She has been teaching curriculum courses and curating workshops related to English for academic purposes, research in academic writing, English communication for ESL students, and language teaching pedagogy for more than a decade now. Most recently, at the Ambedkar University, Ashoka University, IGNOU, Jamia Millia Islamia, Jawaharlal Nehru University, as well as the Tata Consultancy Services. With a major in English literature and translation criticism, her doctoral work at Jawaharlal Nehru was in the domain of culture and performance studies. She is deeply invested in understanding how words or logos perform and hence experiments multilingual, multimodal, care-infused pedagogical strategies in her classrooms or labs. She spearheads an initiative for scholars where she hosts writing retreats in her writing booth, conducts workshops on critical thinking, reading and writing, and mentors researchers' writing or editing processes through one-on-one consultations. She believes that writing should not be a solitary or confusing process and advocates collective and collaborative writing. This article being one of her most recent peer collaborative endeavors. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anushka, Tanu, Chaiti ma'am, for introducing me. And thank you everyone who's taken your time to listen to this talk. We all do understand how seminal reading and writing is to everything that we do in academia, right? So there can't be anything more important than reading and writing. And I don't think there's anything outside reading and writing that we do in classrooms or even outside, right? So what I've tried to kind of do today is try to understand how the craft of persuasion is an important skill in academic writing. Okay, and that's what I'll screen share. Tanu, please let me know if something's not visible. Is it visible, Tanu?
Yes, Poulomi, it is.
Okay, thank you. So this is what I've named it, Right to Persuade, the Craft of Argumentative Writing. So as you can understand by the very title of it, that I'm going to focus majorly on academic writing, and particularly that pertains to the domain of argumentative writing. And therein, there is something which is very important sitting there in the cusp of argumentative writing, is how do you persuade, right? So in this scenario, what I would like to do in the first kind of brainstorming, because we have a few students here and teachers as well, is to just do a quick word association game to understand what we already associate with the idea of persuading someone or arguing with someone, or the very idea of argument. So you can use the chat box and send me your answers. Whatever comes to your mind, a word, a phrase, a sentence. What does persuading bring to your mind, and what does the concept of argumentation bring to your mind? Arguing with someone or arguing for something. So I'll be looking in the chat box for your responses. Is the chat also visible there in the live? Hopefully it is, or I'll read out whatever comes in the chat boxes. Maybe just 2 minutes to start thinking about the word persuade and the word, thank you, ma'am, thank you. The word persuade and the word argument. What does it bring to you? What memories, what associations, what connections, what connotations, what denotations do they bring to your mind? Students particularly, there's nothing right or wrong answer, so please be very, very free in writing in the chat box. Argument in support or against any notion, okay? Thank you, Rainisha. That's one response. There are around 30 students, I'm guessing, so at least a half expression of your beliefs and ideas. Absolutely. Okay. Lure. Interesting. Interesting. To make someone believe in something, that's to persuade. Okay. Thanks, Muskan. Okay, let's see what comes up more. Persuading. Presenting facts and evidences to support your ideology or notion. Okay. Think of all the positive and negatives as well. Okay. Maybe a minute more. What comes to your mind when you say, don't try to persuade me, don't argue with me? We hear this in regular spoken conversation on a daily basis, right? Okay, convince. Very good. Very good. Imposition. Argument is a product of premise and supporting reasons. Fantastic, fantastic. It's really fascinating to find these words already there in the brainstorming session. It just makes the work of a facilitator so easy. Manipulation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, Jayashree. Okay. Opposite view. Okay. Arguments. Convincing others to agree with facts and values. Okay. Very good. Very good. Great. Okay. So different perceptions. Different perceptions. Our point of view. Okay. Great. We all discourse. Wow. Lovely. Lovely. Lots of comments coming in, and this just sums up almost everything that I have to say today. So you've made my work very easy. Thank you. So you can keep on adding more comments in the chat box. In the meanwhile, I'll go back to the slide. And the reason that I want to go back, I'm not going to say anything that is there in the chat box, whether it's right, wrong. In fact, there's nothing that you said here which is absolutely not applicable to the idea of persuasion or argumentation. But I want to begin with a story that might be familiar to some of you. So the story is about this king in Rome. And good or bad or worse, he was a great king. And however, as often this is a problem with most kings, is that they have a set of kinsmen who don't like them. So this king also did not have a set of people who didn't like them, didn't support him. And what happens is they kind of conspire to oust the king, and not just oust him, but kill him, murder him, right? So tell me if anyone, raise your hand, put it in the chat box if this story sounds similar to something that you've read. I know some of you possibly have, but I'm just giving a brief so that all of you get to the context of what I'm going to show next. So what happens is these people are conspiring against him and they want to murder him, but they can't do it because he's a king and needs the help of someone very close to the king, and figures out they can persuade someone, does persuade him, and in the middle of everyone on the Ides of March, in front of the entire citizens, the king is murdered. The people are convinced that it's a great thing to do because the conspirators have possibly been able to convince the people that he was not good enough and they deserved better. So these people are just taking the royal position now. However, there's one man who was a very close friend to the king who thinks that he has been meted out with some kind of injustice. And this needs to be avenged, right? So he, in this moment where the entire population is against him, particularly because he happens to be the friend of the king, the entire population is against him, but and also the conspirators have somehow convinced the entire population. So he has to, he wants to avenge the king, but he is not in a very nice spot. He's in a very tight spot. Nobody is believing him right now. Whatever he has to say with a lot of caution. Rings a bell? Any familiar story? Students? Even teachers? I can give you a name and suddenly you'll, oh, okay, this is the story. It's a story of Rome. There's a king who's murdered by his kinsman, and there's one man who raises to the occasion and kind of stirs the people. So
Julius Caesar.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Julius Caesar, right? So when we talk about persuasion, one of the masterpieces of persuasive passages is this passage by Antonio, the kinsman who was beloved by Caesar. When he's trying to stir the people, and he's in a very tight spot, right? Nobody believes him, but he's trying to use words to his benefit. So the next few moments, we're going to see something. And Tanu, if you could just do the screen share for me, I'll stop the screen share. We'll listen to this, then come back and try to understand what's going on. And while you listen, pay very keen attention to the words he's using and how he's using it, and how the audience's perception keeps on changing while he's saying one sentence after another. Okay, so Tanu, if you please do the needful, I'll stop presentation.
He says, for Brutus' sake, he finds himself beholding to us all. 'Twill Brutus be no harm of Brutus here. This Caesar was a tyrant. That servant. We are blessed that Rome is rid of him.
You gentle Roman.
Peace. Let us hear him.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it was a grievous fault. Grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious. And Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. If this in Caesar seem ambitious, when that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. And sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? Judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is there with Caesar. Just pause till it come back to me.
Tanu, that will be all. Thank you so much. Okay, so that was most probably a very familiar piece for some of you. For some of you, it's not familiar, and hence I decided that we can just watch this scene so that it gives us the context of the situation and you understand what is it I'm talking about. This person in a very tight spot trying to persuade an entire bunch of people, maybe all the citizens there, against a group of people who are also against him. So in a very tight spot. So he just started with being one person, and slowly things start changing for him, right? So in this speech of Antonio, there is this is in front of you, and I would want you to unmute yourself or use your chat box and think what in these phrases. Now forget about Shakespeare writing it, and let's look at this as a text that we are reading to learn argumentation, right? So if you are reading this to learn argumentation, can you find me, because those are the words that I found interestingly, I'm very happy about it. I've already found it in the brainstorming session: premises, arguments, claims, persuading someone, trying to come out with facts and notions. So these are the words. So can you give me the sentences which actually point to those kinds of elements of academic writing? And I would ask the students to do this, please. Tanu, if you can see the chat and respond if there are responses. I'll not stop the screen share, because then I won't be able to, students won't be able to read this.
Yes, sure, Poulomi.
Yeah, if there are any responses, please read it aloud with the name.
Right.
So my question here is very clear. There are certain elements here. So you can unmute yourself or even write in the chat boxes, whatever you think here worked as an instrument of persuasion. We do understand that the next scene would have just showed you how the people suddenly changed and said, there is truth in what he says. We must listen more from him. So this is what happens just after these few sentences that Antonio says in this very difficult, tight position where he was. In the beginning, no one believed him. And now suddenly there are some people who started believing in his words. So what exactly has worked here? There is a very crucial element of persuasion being played around with words. Any responses, Tanu?
Not yet. I think they're still thinking.
Okay. Maybe a minute. I won't be very...
Yeah, so we have a response by Ranjana Yadav. She says he was ambitious. So
he was ambitious. Okay, what is this, Ranjana? Like, who was ambitious?
Okay, Jayashree says repetitive use of Brutus is an honorable man.
Okay. Repetition of a certain rhetoric. Okay, very good. Anything else? This is a fine piece of argumentation. Think about it. There are premises, there are claims, there are evidences.
Antony claimed him, gave him the crown 3 times, but he rejected. Yet Brutus called him honorable.
Yes. So what is this? This is, what would you call this?
Kind of satire, like he wants, they call him honorable, Brutus honorable, but here we can see Caesar rejecting the crown and he is not ambitious and at all.
Yeah. No, I completely get the satire in the entire thing. This is a fine piece of satire as well, right? I'm not going into satire, humor, rhetoric, not that part. What I'm trying to ask you is, what are the evidences here that, and what is Antonio trying to say? Antonio is trying to say is that Caesar was murdered because he was thought to be ambitious and bad for his people. And he's trying to reject it, but he's trying to reject it in a very fine way. He's trying to give evidences. So should I call that this is a piece of evidence? I presented him the crown thrice and he refused it. So this proves he was not ambitious, right? Can I say this is one piece of evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. That's one piece of evidence. Do you find other pieces of evidences here in this passage? Okay, let's not wait. Maybe once I start showing you, things might just start getting like you might get the sparks here. I'll come to this later. So here, I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him, right? The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. This is almost like a statement, right? I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. So you can hear me. I'm just here to bury Caesar, not to praise him. I don't have any, though later on you would say that this is a satire and he just meant the opposite. He intended to praise him and he intended to do much more than burying Caesar. But right now we can say these are premises, right? And the reason I'm using this is after this, you will tell me what are premises, okay? So you start with something as facts, okay? So I've come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. And this is a known fact that people, when they die, the good is often interred with their bones and the evil lives on, right? So these are premises. Then there is something that happens, and there's one student who already has identified it. There's a repetition that happens, right? Noble Caesar, under the leave of Caesar, Brutus is an honorable man. So this keeps on coming back again and again, as if it's a fact. As if it's a fact, but slowly through the art of persuasion, Antonio is going to prove to us that this is a false premise. So he starts saying that this is a premise, but slowly he's going to build it into a false premise and actually use it as a counter argument to his argument that the very killing of Caesar was wrong because he was not an ambitious man. He was not bad for his countrymen, right? Now, there are certain predicates. Now, what are predicates? Now, premises have a very interesting thing. Premises are the facts, the ideas, the notions. You have given me this word, the notions on which a certain argument is built, right? So premises are those. So we clearly understand that to start an argument, you need certain premises. Can you see that element in this speech? Yes, we can see that, right? Now, next thing that a student has already said is that there is a repetition, which is a rhetorical device, satirical as well. However, this can also often lead to tautology. And there is this sense of coming back to the same sentence. It begins by meaning something, but it ends almost goes to the level of humor, where he's very taunting and saying, and okay, this is what proves that Brutus is an honorable man for you, right? So he keeps on repeating so many times that by the end of it, people do understand that it's just the opposite of it, what is true. Now, what are predicates? Now, this is also a term that you often get in the entire structures of argumentation, is predicates and grounds, right? Now, predicates and grounds are things. These are, again, facts and notions, but the difference between predicates and premises is that you start with a premise, but then after your entire argumentation, you might kind of go back, or there is a chance of that premise turning into a false premise, depending on how you argue. So as we can see here, Antonio was in a very bad position. So Antony couldn't kind of start by saying, I have come here to praise, listen to me. Brutus was a bad man. You all have been cheated. He would have been possibly killed by these citizens then and there had he taken that stance. So he had to start with a premise, which he would soon kind of counter himself. So counter arguments coming in later. But predicates are things which are kind of used to build the ground of an argument. So again, notions, but generally predicates are not something that would turn into false later on, which would turn into negatives later on. And generally predicates are used very, very cautiously to appeal to the ethos. Now, for many of you, you've heard these words somewhere or the other in your rhetoric classes, logos, pathos, and ethos, right? So logos is the logic or the rationale part of it. The pathos is the part where you are appealing to the emotion, and you might very well understand what is the emotion right now here in this situation, right? The king has been killed. The citizens suddenly, like just before the killing, believed that was the greatest thing to happen. The king should have been killed because Brutus and party and Cassius and all of them had made them believe that, yes, that's the ideal thing to do. They were in that position. But just after this speech, which is not more than about 15 to 20 lines, suddenly these citizens are turning, they are changing, their hearts are changing, right? So in this situation, you can understand it is important for Brutus to let the people know what is his credibility, right? Now, so that is what you should also be aiming for as a writer, to build the credibility. Now, what is the credibility? The point of credibility here, I'm a friend, faithful and just to me. So I'm a friend. Brutus was Caesar was a faithful and just friend to me, and hence I have come here. So I have the credibility to talk to you, right? I have the credibility to address all of you. So listen to me, right? So these are predicates. There are more predicates there. And the first piece of evidence comes in when he says, and now, what is evidence? Evidence is basic in a trial, in a court of trial. What is evidence? Evidence is proof, right? So in your writing, when you're using evidence, it could be either qualitative, quantitative, it could be quotes, images, metaphors, explanations, descriptions, narrations. All of that could be used as evidences. But in this situation, let's see what are the evidences that Antonio brings to the plate, right? So the first piece of evidence is he had brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. So that's the first one. Okay, so great. Brutus had made you understand that Caesar was an ambitious king and needed to be killed for the improvement of Rome, or for the liberation of Rome, or whatever. So, but then he was a king who brought in people, who brought in money for the general coffers, right? Who brought in resources for the country. And then he's asking this rhetorical question. Do you think still Caesar is an ambitious person? The next evidence that he gives, when the poor had cried, Caesar hath wept. So when the poor is crying, the king is crying as well. Well, then ambition, I think, should be made of sterner material, because if the king is also crying with the poor, then he's definitely a very soft-hearted king, right? So please try to understand here how research, your propositions, your whatever you're claiming, can also come as part of questions sometimes, and sometimes as part of statements. So the first one was a question. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? That was a question. The next one is not a question. It's a statement. But the next one again is a question. Was this ambition? The third piece of evidence comes in is all you did see. You all did see that on the Lupercal, which was a day which is set for the crowning of the king, Antony himself had presented the crown to Caesar. And here they're talking about crown to anoint Caesar. And he had refused it thrice, right? He's telling that Caesar had refused it. He did not take that crown all of a while. Well, if he was really ambitious, should he have refused it? Most probably not, right? So the satire is slowly building up, slowly, bit by bit. So I hope you understand how persuasion is being operative here. And you have to notice how Antony is using the question mode. He's also using statement modes, and the very interesting use of three pieces of evidence. Now, this has been seen across all kinds of writing, is that three pieces of evidence for any claim works as the best idea, right? So whenever you're trying to prove something, if you come up with three pieces of evidence, that's supposedly the best number. 1 or 2 is too less, more than 3 is too more. It's too much, right? You will bore your readers with it. So 3 pieces of evidence. Go back to Shakespeare, he's doing the same thing. So now these evidences could be arranged in the weakest to the strongest argument style, right? Or it could be the strongest to the weakest. However, for me, I read it here in the Nestorian order. Right now, what is the Nestorian order? In an argumentation, if you have a particular claim, you want to say something, and to prove that, you have 3 evidences, right? In a very trial courtroom language. So you have 3 evidences, but how would you place them in your narrative? The best way to place them is in the Nestorian order. The Nestorian order is taken from this Martial anecdote, where the weakest claim, the weakest proposition that you have is sandwiched between the stronger one and the strongest one. So the last one comes as the strongest one. So for me, this is a fine piece of Nestorian order. However, you can say this is weakest to strongest. That for me, it's different. For you, it can be very different. However, what I'm trying to say here is for academic writing, Nestorian order works very, very well. So when you have 3 pieces of evidences, sandwiching your weakest one between the 2 stronger ones and ending with the strongest piece of evidence that you have often gives a very, very strong punch to your argumentation, right? Now, you all love him once, not without cause, right? So what was the premise? So as I said, what are premises? Premises are which are things that are there. It's like facts, almost facts, right? So he started by saying that, okay, good gets interred with the bones, evil lives on. Caesar has been told is ambitious. If someone's really ambitious, then the person should be taken out of position because it's a very grievous fault. Again, a fact. And the next fact is, you all loved him once, not without cause. So after giving the evidence, he's using this as coming back as a premise, right? So these are different words. The reasons I have written different words for the same idea is to make you understand is that these are different words that you will also encounter while you start studying about argumentation. You will get the word claim, you will get the word proposition, you might also get the word hypothesis. But the interesting thing is this, all of this is subject to condition. And what is the condition? The condition is how powerful your evidences are. Now, how to draw evidences, what could be your evidences, we'll slowly get into more academic register, because right now we are still not in a very academic register, but just to make you understand, because you would remember this far more than talking about a drab text. Hence, I thought this would be super, super useful. The final thing that comes in here is after you've said and done everything, you would want to just put across your final statement, right? Your final argument, the core argument, call it the thesis, call it the substantive point. That is what you just lay out at the end of it. So what happens here? He's not writing an academic paper. He's come here to persuade people. So he started in a position where he's just trying to prove that, okay, fine, this is what Brutus has told you, this is what has happened, but this is the evidence, so what do you say? But this is the evidence, so what you say? So that was his nature of cyclical argumentation. And finally he says, what cause withholds you then to mourn for him? Now that your king is dead, he's talking to the citizens, why are you holding back your tears? Can't you even cry and mourn for your king? And obviously, the moment people mourn for someone, you can't mourn from a position of enmity. You mourn from a position of love. You mourn from a position of care. You mourn from a position of feeling that you've lost someone dear, right? So the very call to mourn for Caesar, you would understand, is basically a call to say that whatever Brutus was trying to prove, that Caesar was an ambitious king and needed to be killed, is false. Right? So his substantive point is that you should mourn for your king. And the final conclusion is, oh, judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. So now that they're not mourning, he's again kind of going into that satirical mode and saying that, okay, so if you're not mourning, then judgment, there is no judgment, there is no logic, there is nothing called rationality in mankind anymore, right? I would take a quick set of questions here, if there's any questions, or else I'll go ahead. Tanu, please let me know if there are questions. Is it okay? Should I proceed? A thumbs up, a yes would be very helpful. Yes. Students? Anything? Okay. Okay. Fine. So now we were in the context of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. We need to be out of it now. We need to start applying the things that we learned in this argumentation of Antony to prove that Brutus is not an honorable man. And let us see how we can apply it to our academic writing. Okay. And again, academic writing is not very different from the way persuasion happens. So persuasion in academic writing also takes a lot from these kinds of strategies. So the premise, as I've said, you build up your introductory background by writing down the premises. They are supposedly true unless you want to use satire or irony at the later half of your argumentation and prove them to be false premises, right? Or later on, the premises themselves might become counter-arguments. The next is proposition. Now, what is proposition? The other words for propositions were claims, were hypotheses. So you're claiming something, you're proposing something. So the very word propose. So essence of which you want to convey. This is what I want to say. So that's the proposition. The reasons are the logical connections that you would like to connect to the evidence to the proposition, right? Then comes the evidence. We have seen how in Brutus's, in Antonius' speech, we had evidences. We had 3 evidences used in the structured in the Nestorian order. So you would like to use qualitative evidence, great, go ahead, use it. If you want to use quantitative, again, great, images, pictures, metaphors, quotes, all of that play as evidences. Rhetorical devices and techniques. This is where the rhetoric and how you're placing it or how you are saying it, the language that you choose to use for a certain kind of argumentation, the eloquence of it comes in, right? Then comes the counter argument. This is where spoken communication becomes different from written communication. Speaking in everyday register becomes different from academic writing, because what is different? What do you think is different when we speak and when we write? A little bit of talking and unmuting and talking, or some comments in the chat box would be so useful. Think in terms of audience. When I'm speaking, what happens? When I'm writing, what happens?
while we are talking, so there is a direct conversation. We can get reaction, right?
Very
So
good.
we
Very
can
good.
counter that person. We can make that person understand by using some other argument. But in writing, there is no
No
option
scope.
like this.
Very good, Jayashree. You just got it right in the heart of the problem. So in writing, the problem is you are imagining everything. You are imagining your argumentation. You are thinking in your mind what your best evidences could be. You are also imagining what could be the naysayers telling you. What if there are people who don't agree with your argument? So you will also have to write about them. You will have to take into conversation their voices, imagining what they would say, and bring those voices in. However, you just can't leave it there in your essay, right? Because if you leave it there in your essay, those are the loose ends. Those are the ends that you don't tie up, right? How would you tie it back to your argumentation? You would say, why would I want to place anything that is not useful for me, right? What was Antony doing, right? Did you see him using the phrase, but Brutus is an honorable man? He was just trying to prove the opposite, but then he kept on using it because he wanted to bring in that counter voice. He has to use that counter voice to build his own argumentation. In talking, we interact with each other, but in writing, it is not possible because it is one way. Yes. Hence the counter argument, right? So you imagine your naysayers, people who are not going to agree to you. And then you're also imagining, okay, fine, if you don't agree with me, what can I tell you to make you convinced? Hence persuade. So a piece of writing which takes into its fold not just the evidences, not just the proofs of your claims, but also imagines your possible naysayers, your possible readers who would not agree with your argument, and then give counter to those counter arguments, include them in the writing of your essay, is part of persuasive academic writing. Right? So what we are trying here is to have a similar effect as Antony's speech, but then just that there are no people here. It's all me. It's all me. I'm thinking, okay, great. I don't agree with you. Okay, you don't agree with me. What will I say to make you agree with me? Right? Persuasion. So this entire drama, this performance of voices is just happening in the writer's head. And you're writing out in a manner as if it's a conversation of voices. Your answer is a conversation of voices, right? Voices that do agree with you, obviously they are your evidences, and voices who don't agree with you or possibly would not agree with you, but then you make them sit with you on a coffee table and say, okay, friend, you don't agree, let me give you this evidence, and then you tell me why you don't agree with me. Will you still not agree with me when I give you this evidence? Will you still not agree with me when I give you that evidence? Very similar to what Antony is doing, right? So he's repeatedly saying, okay, great, he was a bad man, he was a corrupt person, corrupt king, but then he brought in money for the coffers, but then he wept for the poor, but then this is what he has done. I gave him the crown, he refused it thrice. Well, you started saying that he was ambitious. Is he? So what happens here is the readers, the imagined readers, have already gone flip side. They have turned. They have been persuaded. That is the craft of academic writing. So academic writing is conversation in writing. So you're not just writing as a mind where you are just letting out what you think, but you're also almost kind of having this conversation of voices that you don't agree with, voices that don't agree with you, but you're bringing them into your paper and then countering them, right? So that is the interesting part of academic argumentative writing. However, academic writing is a bigger thing. Not all pieces of academic writing has to be argumentative, and today we are concentrating on the argumentative part of it, on the persuasion part of it. Okay, so these were some of the questions I thought I would ask. Now I might just give you a minute to type out certain answers. One is already that you've given me, that there are no interaction happening in written communication. However, in spoken communication, there is that interaction happening. Anything else that comes to your mind? Just take a moment here, or else I'll just show whatever I had thought in my mind. Not all of them, but yes, more points can be added once students start talking. Am I audible? Am I clear? I'm sorry for this music outside. There seems to be some barat or something, I don't know.
No, Poulomi, I think you're perfectly clear. Yeah.
It's clear? Okay, fine. Okay. Any answers, students? Spoken argument is different from written argumentation. Agreed. We all agreed with that. What are those differences? One, you said interaction. Anything else? Come on, some answers. Okay, conversation is instant, but writing is prepared. Fantastic preparation. I'll take that. Thank you, Juhi. Thank you, Riteshi. Riteshi has said about interaction. Juhi said about preparation. Very, very important pieces for the difference between spoken communication, spoken argumentation. We all argue spoken with our parents, friends, teachers most of the time. The other side is written argumentation. Okay, great. Back on the PPT, Tanu?
Yes. We do have one more response by Tanishka. Yeah.
Use of non-verbal communication is an effective way in spoken communication. Very good. There is a non-verbal communication. The fact that I'm raising my hand, I'm smiling, and I'm squinting my eyes, the fact that I'm coming close to the screen, going away. So all of that gestures, the non-verbal communication, the look of the eye, the frown on the forehead, not there in written communication. So your imagined audience, you can't even think what they are kind of going through or what they are feeling. So what you have to do, this is an entire story of anticipation, right? It's an entire story of forecasting what people might feel when they read your piece, right? What your teacher might feel when he or she reads your piece, right? So it's an entire story about persuasive writing is about how good you are in predicting the effect of your writing on your readers, right? So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Simran. That does bring in one element of what I had thought. Just a moment. Okay, so in function, when you're writing a written argumentation, generally, when do you do written argumentation? You do it when you're writing to prompts. You are arguing because your prompt that your teacher has given you, argue, evaluate, compare, explain. So all these prompts are asking you to do certain amount of argumentations, hence you're doing it. You're writing answers for examination, or you're engaging in academic conversations, right? And when I say conversations, it includes, again, like both writing is also a conversation, right? You're conversing with entire academia when you're getting published or you're writing a paper or even presenting in a conference. So engaging in academic conversations. And the third thing is contributing something new or original to the existing disciplinary knowledge, which is when you write a project or a thesis or any kind of theses, whether at whatever stage you do it, whether it is master's, MPhil or PhD, or even beyond, when you're writing papers for publication, you're trying to think of one new POV, one new point of view, one new perspective, something original to contribute to your existing disciplines, right? So in function, written argumentation has these reasons, these kind of differences from spoken argumentation. And in nature, they are different because as something that has already come up from student responses, anticipating audience response, hence you need counter arguments. More coherent and closely knitted than spoken speech. Spoken speech sometimes can be loose, can have gaps and lacunas, which can later be filled up because, okay, I would get an occasion again. Even in a debate, you do have a second round of debating, right? You don't just stop with one round. You always have a rebuttal round. So that rebuttal in your paper also exists. But the only difference is you don't get a second round. everything's there in the span of just one paper. You argue, and then you say what the counter arguments are, and then you again come back to the rebuttal, because you have to fight your own case. There's nobody else coming to win the war for you, right? So more coherent and closely knit than spoken speech, and hence the need of transitions and careful use of rhetoric devices become very, very important. And also something that has come up in the students' responses, preparation, right? You're preparing, you're mapping, you're planning your entire writing, because if you don't do it with preparation, it might come out as something loose, something which is not knitted, something which is not thought through. Maybe you're not thought through the structuring of your paper, and hence it will not serve the purpose of persuading your teacher that you have done a good job. If nothing else, that's what your essay is supposed to do, right? Because only at the end of the day, if you persuade your teacher that I have understood the prompt appropriately, effectively, and as best as could have been possible, you get a high score, right? So even all essays, when they say that they're not trying to prove anything, even everyday essays that we write for our classrooms are always trying to prove something. If not anything else, they are trying to prove how much you have understood the text to your teacher. And hence, the teacher will evaluate accordingly, right? So even essays that you write, that your teachers are giving you, are kind of persuasive essays. You're trying to persuade your reader, your teacher, that yes, I've understood what you're trying me to do. You want me to do, and I know what the text is talking about. I have a clear grasp of all the ideas, right? Finally, logical fallacies as in repetitions, generalizations, biases, prejudices. These are all kinds of logical fallacies, right? So I can have an entire class on logical fallacies and how to kind of eradicate them from writing. But again, that can come in later, because it's a huge topic. But keeping in mind that you have as humans, we are very, very hubristic. We tend to make generalizations very easily. We tend to make comments which are biased. We tend to make posit ideas or notions which come from a certain kind of ideology. We tend to repeat the same things over and over again in different words, in different combinations. So these are very human problems. These are very human errors, right? So these logical fallacies, which might go unnoticed in spoken speech because nobody is keeping a note of it, and maybe even your listener will have to be very, very keen to listen to what you're saying and remember that you're repeating something. But in writing, things are very, very evident, right? Because I have it in front of me. I can go back as many times I want. You have no control how many times a particular reader, how many times your teacher will read your passage to actually unpack it, right? So logical fallacies have to be treated with a lot more caution, and hence the cautious use of evidence and reasoned proposition is required. Okay? All clear till this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now once I've started talking about class essay writing, right, and that's what we all do. We begin by addressing questions that our teachers give us. Now you have to understand what is the requirement of these prompts, right? Now these are words that you will often find in your essay prompts that your teachers give you. Something like define, something like classify, something like demonstrate, something like compare or question this, something like argue or judge or critique or value, and even sometimes formulate, investigate, and designate, things like this. The reason why I've put this image here is to make you understand is that these prompt questions, these prompt words do not mean the same. They do not require you to answer in the same way. Each of these prompt questions mean different things. And when your teacher is putting that word in the question prompt, they're asking you to do something. So be very careful what you give, because you might think, okay, I've done a good summary, but then why I'm not getting a good marks? Because your teacher had asked to argue and you've ended up giving a summary. Or your teacher had asked define and you ended up giving an argumentation. So you have to understand that when these terms come in, I will also share the PPT with all students, so you don't need to kind of write all of them right now. You can just look at the screen and try to understand. These are the words which you will often find in your prompts, in your question prompts. So the higher you go up in this Bloom's taxonomy, in the words that get associated with the Bloom's taxonomy, you understand it's kind of climbing the ladder of reasoning. The more high you go, the more finer, the more refined your strategy of argumentation and persuasion becomes. Now, for something like define or duplicate or list or memorize or repeat or state, do you need to persuade anyone? Not really, right? They're simple, flat. You're being asked to summarize something, you're being asked to kind of define something. So just take it, lift it, write it. That's what you do. Comprehension questions. Understanding is also something that comprehension questions still deal with, but beyond that is not comprehension questions anymore. Beyond that is at the level of analysis and synthesis of ideas. And that is where persuasive academic writing comes in, persuasive argumentative writing comes in, right? So the moment you're asked to implement something, to solve something, to demonstrate something, what your teacher is asking, whatever you've learned, apply it and tell me. Show and tell me that you've understood. When your teacher uses these prompts like compare and contrast or distinguish or question this idea that the text says, what your teacher is asking you is to analyze, not to give a simple summary, right? So take a distance from the text, take a step back from the text. Think critically, and these are tricks that I've already explained in the last presentation, where we worked with the different ideas, different questions that you can ask the text. You remember, all of you? So we were already talking about what are the questions you can ask the text. What is critical reading? It's not just taking what the text is telling you, but it's also reading its silences. It's also reading the things that the text is not wanting to tell you, what the text is hiding. So all of that is part of analysis. Then comes, after you've analyzed your text or the prompt that wants you to analyze, the next level is to evaluate. Now you're slowly moving up the ladder and almost coming at the position of the judge, where you can take different texts and analyze and evaluate things for yourself. What works for you, what does not, and most importantly, essays that require to come up with thesis statements, research questions, slowly climb up the ladder to evaluation and creation. You do understand the difference in the word creation. What is creation? Creation is making something happen, new, original, right? So the moment you are at the topmost level and you are and these are the prompts which are most difficult for students to tackle with. I completely understand. When you don't have the radar anymore, when you do not know, and your teacher wants you, okay, give a project on this idea. It's very difficult to come up with research questions, right? Because then the prompt is asking you not to actually do all of that, but most importantly, do the topmost, the create part of it. What do you have to say apart from just analyzing and evaluating and applying and understanding and remembering, right? So you're assembling, you're constructing something new, you're formulating something, you are authoring something for the first time, you're investigating something. So all of that. So just to make you understand that henceforth, whenever you come across these words in your question prompts, take stock of them, sit down, think through. Think what your text has and what your prompt is asking you to do, right? This is a gap that sometimes students find very difficult to kind of bridge, because you possibly know the answer, you have it in you, but it's just that you did not take time to think through what is the question asking you, right? So sit down, take stock of this. If you are unclear about what the prompt is asking you, this is the time to go and talk to your teachers, to go and talk to your mentors and reach out to them and ask, this is what I understand you're asking me to do. Am I correct? Right? So rather than writing an entire paper and getting a bad score and then realizing, oh my God, I did it wrong, the better idea is to sit down with the prompt, try to analyze, do a mind mapping, kind of put in all your thoughts, show that planning to your teacher. And once you've gotten that green signal from your teacher, go ahead and write that essay. right? Not always possible for examination situations, like sit-down examinations, but if it is a assignment, a take-home assignment, which many teachers are trying these days, please try this, okay? So do not think that all these words, they all mean the same thing. They don't mean the same thing, okay? While you are thinking of the topmost, you are at the topmost level of Bloom's taxonomy. You are creating something. Now, this is where people struggle with most. Once you have done all of that, and the more higher you go up in the academic ladder, graduation, post-graduation, masters, and then PhDs and all of that, you're actually going up in the Bloom's taxonomy. That's how your skill sets are improving. However, requiring work that needs you to create something, the topmost section of the Bloom's taxonomy, you also need to understand that that's also one of the positions of largest confusion for students, right? And researchers. The reason is we often tend to think, okay, I'll do something which is absolutely original or come out with an idea that no one else has thought before. Or you're trying, now that is something that you have to kind of, bring your energies together and think that maybe originality is lurking somewhere here and there, but then it's not like you sit down and an apple will fall on your head and voila, you have your original idea. That's not going to happen. It's going to come through reading lots of material, and that will come by and by. However, the other problem that students face is that they try to come up with thesis statements that are not debatable. Right? Now, why is it a problem? The thing is, if you start, now go back to the words that we were dealing with, premises, right? Now, if you start with a premise and then you are proposing something which is already proven by everyone, or people believe it, and there is really nothing to say, there is no alternative of it, there is no debate about it, there is no confronting opinions about it, then the question is, why bother, right? Why bother writing an entire project on something that no one is countering? So the very first premise is that your thesis statement needs to be at a position of debate. There needs to be different opinions about a certain thing for you to tell, I prefer this one and not that because these are my reasons, right? So just for an example, what is a non-debatable thesis statement? Pollution is bad for the environment. Can I really debate about it? Can I really find a single person in the world who would say pollution is great for the environment? Right? So this is hardly a thesis statement, but I can still work on in the domain of pollution if I kind of write this same idea in a different manner, related idea. At least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. Now I have made a statement which might have counter arguments, which might be, there might be people sitting on the other side of the debate telling, no, 25 is too less, we should make it 50. There might be other people who are saying 25 is too much, we should make it just 2, right? And your position is, no, I need to spend 25% of my budget on limiting pollution because this, right? So there is a debate, there is a scope of debate. So that scope has to be there. If you are at the top of the Bloom's taxonomy and thinking about what to write about, this is one of the greatest struggles that you're going to have. So keep in mind, start with something that's debatable. If it's not debatable, it's not going to work for you. You're just going to waste time thinking about that idea. Okay? So it has to be debatable. There has to be different opinions on it. The next is that you need to make your thesis argument narrow. The more narrow it is, the better. The reason is, if you try to kind of, this is where logical fallacies come in. The more broad you make your thesis statement, then you would end up making generalizations of all kinds. Now, you would very well understand that generalizations have their problems, right? Because you're not taking into cognition what are the specificities, what are the problems of particular people, what are some communities suffering from. So you're just making it black and white. And that is the source of maximum confusion in uncredible research, right? That you are trying to make generalizations. Generalization is a myth. There is nothing that you can generalize absolutely, unless to say that the sun rises in the east, which is again from where you see it, right? So drug use is detrimental to society. It is, you can say this is a very broad topic as well as it is not debatable. But then if I want to make it narrow, illegal drug use is detrimental because it encourages gang violence. Now that is a kind of a narrow version of this topic, which is still related to drug use, which is still related to the disadvantages it has on society. However, what I'm connecting it to is that illegal drug use is detrimental because it encourages gang violence. This, because it encourages gang violence, is what is giving it specificity, right? Illegal drug use, and more importantly, you're not just thinking about drug anymore, because medicines are also drug, right? So when you say drug use is detrimental to society, I'm making a very general statement. What about medicines? If you don't allow me to use medicines, not possible, right? So illegal drug use is detrimental because it encourages gang violence. So there are two explainers, two parts of the sentence which are adding specificity to the idea. Right. So in this example, the topic of drugs has been narrowed down. It's more manageable for you. First, it's manageable because it's the landscape is manageable. The readings that you have to do is manageable. The second is it's doable within the time that you have. And it's also the number of words that you have to write, because you don't have the entire world to write, right? Neither you have all time to write. You have specific hours to write your essays on. So the best thesis, the best essay is that which gets done. So please, I keep on repeating the statement, is the best research is that research which gets done. So don't think too magnanimously, don't be too ambitious, to come back to that word, but not in the same sense, with your project that it never gets done. So if you end up making your project idea so broad, then most probably you will not end up finishing it. So qualifiers such as typically, generally, usually, on an average help to limit the scope of your claim that you're trying to make, right? Make use of these words, these phrases which help you narrow the scope of your research. Okay, so these are the two most important problems. That there are many others, but the most general ones that people face who don't have a prompt to respond to. When you have a prompt, great. I have kind of a radar that I need to move towards, right? When my teacher is asking argue, I know I'm being asked to argue, so I don't need to think of creating a new idea, and just arguing is okay. When my teacher asks to demonstrate, I do that. I demonstrate and I'm done with it. But when there is no research question, when there is no prompt that your teacher has given you, and you've been asked to write an essay on maybe a text, and then you're thinking, what can I really write about which no one else has written? That is when these two ideas become very, very important. Now, coming back to our very good academic essay standards, and I would like to acknowledge Ananya Dasgupta, Preetha Chakraborty, and Shayantan Datta here, who teach at the Center for Writing and Pedagogy, the Kriya University, for sharing this picture with me and some of the ideas that I'm going to talk next. So, the standard academic essays that we have, and we all know this is something that we've learned when we were kids, right? How to write a good essay: introduction, body, conclusion, strategy. So we still stick with that. We're not really moving outside that, but it's just complicating that idea that we already have. Is it just 3 paragraph essays? Not really. Our academic essays tend to be longer than 3 paragraphs. There are many body paragraphs. There are sometimes 1 or 2 introduction paragraphs, and most probably and conclusion paragraphs, right? Now, paragraphs in academic writing are mostly, it's better to keep them around 250 to 300 words, because that's manageable. That's something that is enough to tackle the complications that you bring in with the topic sentence, and then introducing something, the evidences and the discussions that come in, right? So introductory paragraphs are places where you set out your propositions, right? However, I would ask you, when you're writing your academic essays, and this is a tip I want to say, is that do not waste time thinking how to start your essay. Start writing your body paragraphs first. Start writing whatever comes to you first. Do not think how to start. You can always come back and write your introductory paragraphs, right? Now, these days, we don't write on paper anymore. So now this is more like, it has become easier Earlier, when you used to write on papers, most probably you will have to leave an entire page to come back and write the introduction. But now we are using Microsoft Word or whatever Google document. So you can always come back and write the introduction. So start with the thought that you already have, or if you're already building the thesis or the argumentation or your evidences and claims are already coming to you after reading your readings, and when you start writing essays on them, start writing them. Right? So don't wait for your introductions to come. It is always difficult to start. It is very, very difficult to start. So don't wait for your introductory paragraph to kind of arrive or evolve out of something. They will come to you once you get into the flow. Then concluding paragraphs, there are different kinds of body paragraphs. So you're going to go deep into one of the texts that I was also talking about in the earlier talk while I was discussing the reading strategies. The same text, but we'll look at different paragraphs this time to understand what are the different kinds of body paragraphs that we could have, and two most important body paragraphs to use in standard persuasive academic essays is descriptive evidence and claim evidence. Okay, so the descriptive evidence paragraphs are paragraphs where you describe something, narrate something, and then slowly build your evidences. And the other ones are where there is evidences and then there are claims, right? However, all of that is tied with the entire essay. So it's coherently, tightly wound up with the logic, right? The concluding paragraph could be a reinforcement of your substantive points or theses and the premises that you have finally proven to be true, right? You started with the propositions in a hypothesis state. After the entire essay, you are in a position where you can say, okay, I said A is equal to B, so now A is equal to B because that's how I've already proved, right? That's what I've already proven. So that's you kind of reinforce it in a different way, or it also can be a summarization of different propositions if you have different propositions already. So now that you've proved them, you can conclude by telling that. Okay, now let's go to this essay as I was telling. This is an essay which I was using in the last class, which I will use today as well. And I will make it to Fritz screen so that all of you can see. Is it visible, Tanu?
Yes, Poulomi.
Okay, great. And I would also request a student to... okay, there is a response. Writing is more formal and structured. Spoken word is malleable according to the audience. Absolutely, Simran. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so can I have a voice? I've been speaking for too long, almost an hour, more than an hour actually. So to read the passage and then we can collectively work on it. While we are reading it, we'll also keep our eyes open to spot the certain things that I've labeled there. Who can read it? Any student? Come on, help me.
Yes, I can read.
Thank you, Jayashree. Okay, let me know when you can see it, okay? Is this visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So you can go ahead and read. I'll also kind of mute myself because this music is again getting loud. So we'll all listen to Jayashree now, okay?
Academic feminism is a complex and contradictory matrix of theories, strategies, pedagogies, and practices. One way to think about feminist theory is to say that it investigates how culture saturates the particularities of bodies with meanings and proves the consequences of those meanings. Feminist theory is a collaborative, interdisciplinary inquiry and a self conscious cultural critique that interrogates how subjects are multiply interpellated. In other words, how the representational systems of gender, race, ethnicity, ability, sexuality, and class mutually construct, inflect, and contradict one another. These systems intersect to produce and sustain ascribed, achieved, and acquired identities, both those that claim us and those that we claim for ourselves. A feminist disability theory introduces the ability slash disability system as a category of analysis into this diverse and diffuse enterprise. It aims to extend current notions of cultural diversity and to more fully integrate the academy and the larger world it helps shape.
Ma'am, your mic is muted.
Yeah, okay. What I was saying is I have 3 more paragraphs which will help you to understand this more deeply. However, am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So what we will do here is we'll try to understand what this paragraph has. If you remember annotation for function that we were doing last day, and the reason why I've again come back to this text is to help you understand that in your essays, you're going to also write paragraphs like these. And these are paragraphs that you often find in all essays that you write. And when you are writing an academic essay, a persuasive essay, this is how you are also going to build your paragraphs, right? So in this, if I take it one sentence at a time, and I have given you certain words up here: claim, evidence, description, contradiction, conversation, definition, transition, topic sentence, connecting phrases. So if I go by that, and let's first begin with something as description or a definition, okay? So can you give me the sentences which talk about just trying to explain something, describe something? Which sentence?
The very first sentence.
Very good. The very first sentence. This is definitely either a definition or a description, right? Academic. What is academic feminism? When something answers like that, what do we say? It's a definition, right? Now, this one. One way to think about feminist theory is to say that it investigates how culture saturates the particularities of bodies with meanings and tropes, the consequences of and probes the consequences of those meanings. Now, pay special attention to this. One way to think about feminist theory is when you say something like this, what happens? What are you trying to do? There was a definition. Then you said one way to think about this is, what are you doing?
We are connecting the phrases.
Very good. Conversation. Wonderful. So you're using, trying to build a certain kind of conversation by using connecting phrases, right? Can you trace that? This is a connecting phrase. This has no data. It's just a connection to the last one. So the first one was a definition, but what comes next is it investigates how culture saturates the particularities of bodies with meanings and probes the consequences of those meanings. Now, this is no more a definition. It is a little deeper than that. Let's color it this one. Okay. What is this? This is, I've kept it, etc. I'll color it and write the interpretation. Would I be right to say it is interpretation? The author's interpretation? Am I right if I say it's the author's interpretation?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So how am I connecting these two sentences? There was an idea which can be kind of a dictionary meaning of what is academic feminism. The other way to say about this is this. So this is what I want to say. They say this. This is what I say. I'm connecting those. So there's a conversation coming in. The next sentence again. Feminist theory is a collaborative interdisciplinary inquiry and a self-conscious cultural critique that interrogates how subjects can multiply, interpolated. In other words, so till here, what is it? Isn't it still again a definition? Borrowed?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Right? Again a definition, but what happens next? Let's find out the next word, which is the thread. Is this the thread? In other words?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Next comes the interpretation of this definition. So can you see how everything is sandwiched one on top of other to make this very palatable burger here, right? See, the definition, the connection, and then how the representative systems of gender, race, ethnicity, ability, sexuality, and class mutually construct, inflect, and contradict each other. But still now, what is missing here? A lot of you say, they say, I say is coming in. But is this anything which is argumentative? Or is it missing, still missing? It's okay to be missing. All paragraphs cannot have argumentations.
Yeah, it's missing.
It's missing, right? Can you see the build-up? Can you see the premises being played with? So these are the premises. These are things that are there. Academic feminism. What is academic feminism? People reading with feminism and in academia, they know this. What is feminist theory? People reading feminist theory know this. So nothing new is being said. But the conversation, the background, the grounds is kind of laid out here. So it's building up, the gradual building up. Can you see the drama here? The conversation is being started, right? These systems interact to produce and sustain ascribed, achieved, and acquired identities, both those that claim us and those that we claim for ourselves. In this sentence is something being said that we can say that the author is now starting to say. Can we see that? Can we hear that voice?
Transition?
Yes, it is definitely a transition. But this is also, I would say, and let me color code it a little differently this time. I would say this is an analysis or maybe a synthesis sentence, because now there are different voices coming in. So these systems interact to produce something. So there is a sentence which is kind of synthesizing this, right? So this sentence for me is, just a second. This sentence for me then functions as a sentence of synthesis, right? A sentence of synthesis. A feminist disability theory introduces the ability or disability system as a category, the feminist disability theory. Have we come back to defining something again?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. There you go. The feminist disability theory introduces the ability-disability system as a category of analysis into this diverse and diffuse enterprise. What is this diverse and diffuse enterprise? All the voices that we've been talking about till now, right? So again, we come back to a sentence which is almost similar to description, definition, and furthering the conversation. It aims to extend current notions of cultural diversity and to fully integrate the academy and the larger world it helps shape, right? Again, adding more ideas, one stacking up, almost like a building stacking up one on top of another. But till now, we haven't heard what particularly is the claim and the evidence, right? And the reason you haven't heard is this is not an introductory paragraph. This is taken from something as a body paragraph. If you open the essay, you will see this comes almost in the page 7 or 8 of the essay, right? So this is not one of the introductory paragraphs. So this very body paragraph will tell you that in the middle of your essay, sometimes you will have to write paragraphs where you are explaining things, you're furthering the conversation, you're building up the drama slowly. But every paragraph will not have a claim and evidence. So your introduction paragraphs are paragraphs where you give the proposition, you give the hypothesis, you kind of state it out what your entire essay is going to be about. So that was the introductory paragraph, right? But later on, the paragraphs where we were dealing in the last class, if you remember, those were paragraphs which were abstract paragraphs. I had worked with the abstract paragraph for the first excerpt. The second was the introductory paragraph. It was taken from the introduction of the essay, right? So it was full of claims and evidences. If I can just bring it back just to remind you, because it might be abstract for people who are new here. So this is the activity sheet we were doing last day. And yeah, there you go. So this is basically the first, Tanu, is this visible, the new document? Just a heads up.
Yes, Poulomi, it is.
Okay. So again, I will fit this to screen so that it's visible. Yeah. So what happens here? This was the abstract of the essay. Now, there you see, we had like everything looked like a claim, because that's the place where claims are supposed to be, right? It's in the abstract. Your abstracts are supposed to be the place where you give out your propositions and your main core argumentation, your substantive point. So that needs to be in the abstract, and that's what we had. Now, this is a paragraph which was taken from the beginning of the essay. It was almost at the top of the essay. Second page, maybe somewhere there. So still the introduction part, running the introduction part, right? Now, look at here. Here we had those conversations had started happening, but still we need to study the claims and evidences are playing out a little bit. Next, let's go to this one. This is again a paragraph where there is heavy claims and evidences coming in, right? But all paragraphs need not to be like that, right? There will be paragraphs where you will have to explain things, describe things, lay out the conversation that is happening in between. And this is that kind of paragraph, right? There are two other paragraphs. You can take your time, same prompts. You can color code. So transitions are this. I'll keep it orange. These two paragraphs are for you homework. So Tanu would go ahead and send it. And topic sentence. Well, topic sentence I'd already explained in the last class. What is the topic sentence? A sentence which kind of introduces the main function of the paragraph. What is the paragraph ultimately trying to do, right? Now look at the topic sentence of this paragraph. Academic feminism is ... The first sentence itself will tell us this paragraph is not trying to claim something, but it's going to be a definition paragraph. It's going to be a description paragraph, right? Descriptive paragraph. So that itself shows that something's going to this is what to expect from the paragraph. Now the next sentence, a feminist disability approach fosters complex understandings of the cultural history of the body. Now this particular sentence will show us, like, it just gives us an inkling, okay, now we are not just at the realm of feminist approach or feminist theory, we're slowly moving into the idea of feminist disability. And now the author is going to talk about the complex understanding of that the cultural history. So what is the topic of this entire paragraph? The cultural history of the body with respect to feminist disability approach. That's the topic. And it's there right in the topic sentence. So how do you write topic sentences? The beginning sentences of your paragraphs need to state out the topic, right? Let's get back to this picture we had here. There you go. Topic sentence, right? Then you introduce with the evidence, or what you do is either you introduce the evidence or you build the context or the background, right? You can use, if you are introducing evidence, then you have to come up with the claim, or you can just kind of have descriptions and evidences, descriptions and claims. So depending on what you do, and then you also don't just stop at giving quotations, right? Stating an image, showing a metaphor. You just don't stop at that. You have to analyze. Please remember this. This is something students often end up doing. You put in quotes. We all put in quotes, not just you. I did it also. Okay. I did it. Most probably I also sometimes do it unconsciously, even now if I'm not very careful. Quotes are not decorative. You don't bring in quotes from other people, whatever great authors have said, whatever other scholars have said, to make your essay look beautiful. It's not the purpose of quotes. Quotes are there because quotes are evidences. Quotes are our way of saying that Caesar had brought in money for the nation. Caesar had wept when you had cried. And Caesar had refused the crown thrice when I wanted to offer him, right? And these are things that people know. These are facts, right? So you bring in evidences because it's already there in the academic domain as published material. So it has been almost proven. So you don't need to take extra effort to prove your evidences that you quote from credible sources. Keep in mind, credible sources. If you're using sources which are not credible, then what would end up happening? You would lose connect with the ethos of your audience. Okay, remember logic, logos, ethos, and pathos. You can only play with the emotion when you are clear on the ethos part, right? You put out your own background very clearly. You said, I'm not doing anything illegal here. I'm not trying to prove something which is manipulative, or I'm going to hide information from you. I'm going to only show you one side of the story and hide the other part. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you arguments. I'm also going to give you counter arguments, but I'm not going to stop at that. I'm also going to come with a rebuttal because I have to prove my point, right? I have to come back to my proposition. Unless I want to prove it as a false proposition, a false premise like Anthony did, right? So remembering that. So for the first part, this is what we understand is these are paragraphs which are very, very useful for introducing, elaborating, explaining a concept or idea, or even summing up and concluding your essay sometimes, right? So these are this is the nature of the paragraphs that you would be writing, which includes definitions, descriptions, interpretations, sometimes summaries, maybe 1 or 2 sentences of summaries, connections, transitions, all of that would be there in these kinds of sentences. Is it clear till here? Any questions, please ask. It is a little difficult to understand, so I'm assuming you would have questions, so please ask. Okay, nothing in the chat box. Great. So no questions means no confusion. That just shows I'm too good. Just joking. Okay, so next excerpt. Who's going to read it? Another voice, please. We have another excerpt. This is the excerpt we have. So the rest of it, I'm not going to explain all of them because that's for you, homework. I've already shared this sheet with Tanu and she's going to share with the entire class, or else I can also kind of share it like for you after the workshop. So you can all practice this skill that I just taught you on your own. Okay. So next paragraph. Come on. We have about 18, 19 students, I think.
Ma'am, may I read?
Yeah, sure. Who's this? What's the name?
Ma'am, Ilma.
Ilma. Wonderful. Thank you, Ilma. Thank you so much for helping me. We'll read the entire bit, okay, this time? Is that fine?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Okay. I'll just show you this picture first. There's this picture. Again, the same essay. Now we are slowly coming towards the end of the essay. It's a little before the conclusion. So that's the placing of this paragraph. So try to understand that. This is the photograph that we have there, which comes along with the essay. This is Barbie's friend Becky and the school photographer. And this is the paragraph that comes along with it. Okay? Yes, Ilma. Can you read this for us?
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Banishment from femininity can be both a liability and a benefit. Let me offer with some irony an instructive example from popular culture. Barbie, that cultural icon of the femininity, offers a disability analysis that clarifies both how multiple identity and diversity are commodified and how the commercial realm might offer politically useful feminist counter images. Perhaps the measure of a group's arrival into the mainstream of multiculturalism is to be represented in the Barbie pantheon. While Barbie herself still identifies as able-bodied despite her severely deformed body, we now have several incarnations of Barbie's friend. Share a smile Becky. One Becky uses a cool hot pink wheelchair. Another is Paralympic champion Becky, bought out for the 2000 Sydney Olympics in a chic red, white and blue warm-up suit with matching chair. Most interesting, however, is Becky, the school photographer, clad in a pretty outfit complete with camera and red high-top sneakers. As she prettily who gazes at an alluring Barbie in her camera's viewfinder. This Becky may this Becky may be the incarnation of what Eric Karan has called Barbie's queer accessories. A disabled queer Becky is certainly a provocative and subversive fusion of stigmatized identities, but more important is that Becky challenges notion of normalcy in feminist ways. The disabled Becky, for example, wears comfortable clothes, pants with elastic weights, sensible shoes, and room shirts. Becky is also one of the few dolls with flat feet and legs that bend at the knee. The disabled Becky is dressed and poised for agency, action, and creative engagement with the world. In contrast, the prototypical Barbie performs excessive femininity in her restrictive sequined gowns, crowns, and push-up bras. So, while Becky implies, on the other one hand, that disabled girls are purged from the feminine economy, on the other hand, Becky also suggests that disabled girls might be liberated from those oppressive and debilitating scripts. The last word on Barbies comes from our disability activist who quipped that he would like to outfit a disabled doll with a power wheelchair and a briefcase to make her a civil rights lawyer who enforces the American with Disabilities Act 1990. He want to call her "Sue Your Ass Becky." I think she would. I think she would make a very little role model. The paradox of Barbie and Becky, of course, is that the ultra feminized Barbie is a target for sexual appropriation both by men and beauty practices, while the disabled Becky escapes her sexual objectification at the potential cost of losing her sense of identity and power as a feminine sexual being. Some disabled women negotiate this possible identity crisis by developing alternate sexualities such as lesbianism. However, what Herian Han calls the asexual objectification of people with disabilities complicates the feminist critique of the normative sexual objectification 1988.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elma. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, now this paragraph, if you look a little deeply, has a few things which are similar to the earlier paragraph that we just unpacked, and also has certain differences. Now, what are those? And please let me know in chat boxes. I think you can see it. I will keep on scrolling up and down for you to see, or even maybe share this publicly with you so that you can open it. And I want an answer this time. Okay? Tanu, can you how much time do I have?
Yeah, Poulomi, sorry.
Yeah, how much time do I have? Like, am I running out of time?
Yeah, I think another 15 minutes would be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought
10,
not that much.
no, 10 minutes.
10. Yeah, absolutely. Just
Yes, Ranjana. Yes, Ranjana, go ahead.
Ma'am, one thing I noticed that between both the abstract or exam essays, that in previous one there's just definition and threat like supporting arguments, but here we use the example. Now we have one example, Barbie.
It's an example. There's something. Is it just words, Ranjana?
Sorry, ma'am.
Is it just words, or do you have something supplementing that explanation as well, that example as well?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
Like, ma'am, here writer proves his point by the Barbie and condition of Barbie, like he disabled and all the accessories and clothes, all the things like that.
No, what I'm saying is this is a paragraph, right? And this is a paragraph with something. Can you see what is that with something?
Image.
Yeah, images as evidences, right? So what is happening in this entire bunch of 3 paragraphs is a kind of an unpacking of the image itself, right? Using the image as an evidence, this entire example is built up, right, Ranjana? Got that? So
Yes, ma'am.
you've traced it fantastically. Earlier paragraph were only like giving a conversational entry into the topic. But now, suddenly, evidences start coming in. And the evidences start coming in the form of images, right? It also starts coming in there are many other ways in which evidence is kind of slowly creeping into this paragraph. Can you see that? I'll just go back to this paragraph again. And even if it's not evidences, you can just unmute yourself, because right by now, after reading so many, this is almost like the 5th or the 6th paragraph we are reading like that, you possibly are looking into the paragraph and seeing other things as well. So please unmute yourself and just tell, ma'am, this is this, this is this. So if you feel that, so tell me. What is the topic sentence here? What are the connectors? Apart from the example that Ranjana just said, any other things that you can see? Anything that was not there earlier? Now this paragraph has it.
Developing arguments.
Absolutely developing arguments. But to do that, we were anyway with the intent of developing arguments, getting into the conversation in the earlier paragraph, right? It was still developing the argument. But the elements of writing that we found there was descriptions and a conversational interpretation of that, right? But here, to develop the argument, there's something else coming in. The other elements of writing, academic writing, are coming in, right? What are those? One is example and an image, use of an example and with an image. Can you see other things here which were not there in the earlier paragraph? Try. There's no wrong answer, please. What is looking at you? Just it's looking back at you, staring at you.
Ma'am, here disabled queer Becky is certainly a provocative and subversive fusion of stigmatized identities, but more important is that Becky challenges notion of normalcy in feminist ways. Ma'am, here it is the sentence of topic sentence, I guess.
Absolutely. The first sentence, most of the time, is the topic sentence. So that's for sure. So this is the topic sentence for this one. Banishment of femininity can both be a liability and a benefit is, again, a topic sentence for this one. Because the idea is, what is the topic here? Banishment of femininity being a liability, right? So banishment, you can't, like, just by banishing femininity from the realm is not going to be the problem solver, right? It's a benefit as well as a liability. And to show how it is a benefit and a liability, this example has been used, right? The example of Barbie's friend Becky, all right? Can you see these? Did you see these earlier in the earlier paragraph? What are these? Did you see these earlier? This as well as this. Let's not give it all, but yeah, till here. Can you see that these are the things that were not there earlier? What are these? What do we call them in writing when you have two quotation marks?
Then claims.
Simple. When you put something within quotation marks, what are those?
Evidences.
Okay, evidences. But then, like, what are they? Evidence, image can be an evidence, example can be an evidence, raw data can be an evidence, field work, qualitative and quantitative data can be evidence. So all of this are evidences. But then what is this particular kind of evidence which is written within quotation marks and generally comes with the name of who said it? What do we say it?
Ma'am, already given arguments.
Quotes.
Thank you. Quotes. Right? Already given arguments. Right? You're not wrong. These are evidences because they've already been told by other people and proven. So I don't need to take extra time and energy and waste it on trying to prove it again because these are fixed and sorted. Right? So see how these are also evidences. So when I said your quotations are not ornamental, this is exactly what I meant. When you quote from texts, you are trying to prove a point, right? Now, in this sentence, as she perkily gazes at an alluring Barbie in her camera's viewfinder, this Becky may be the incarnation of what? Incarnation of something. Incarnation of what? And to explain that what, this citation has been brought in, this help of the other text has been taken, right? This quotation has been taken. So can you see how the quotes are seamlessly woven into the paragraphs? So that is how you should also write in your essays. Your quotes are evidences that are seamlessly woven into the analysis that you do. This is an analysis. As she perkily gazes, This is an analysis, but can you see how this analysis is kind of weaving in this quotation that we sometimes just put there without knowing what to do with it, right? Sometimes I in my college life did this often. It's like I like a sentence in a text, I put it because I just like it. I don't know what to do with it. I liked it. It's too good. So therefore I put it. No, that's not the reason why you will put your quotes, right? So next is this one. The last word on Barbies come from the disability activist who quipped that he would like to take the whole disability and then name this person as this. This is what he wants to do, right? Can you also see something coming in here? Did you see markings like these in texts that you read? What do they mean? What do these numbers in your texts mean? Can you use numbers as well when you're writing? Yes?
So, ma'am, we use these numbers for notes and references.
Very good. So what happens is, according to certain style sheets, according to certain citation style sheets, so just as this is a quote, with every quote that you use, with everything that you take from another source, another resource, another author, you will put it in a quotation mark. When it is not your idea, you're taking it from someone else's idea, you will definitely quote it, and there will be a name associated with it. We have a name here. The last word comes from a disability activist. We don't have a name here. Hence, the number 2, because I'm very sure if you go to the text and I've seen it, so the number 2 will actually give you the name of the disability activist, right? Now, in this text, why do you think that instead of, see here, Erica Rand, the name was given. But in this paragraph, the author has chosen not to give the name of the person who the author is quoting, but to give the identity of that person, a disability activist. What does it do different? Like, these are both our quotes. Both has some extra information in the sentence about the quote. But in one place, the author has decided to give the name of the of the resource creator. And in the other one, the disability activist aspect of that person is more important than the name. Why do you think this has happened? And we all do these kinds of things in your writing, and you need to do it. From this, you actually build persuasion. What is the difference in naming someone and then saying, he's my brother? Or is it same?
It is an introduction to personal approach or personal identity.
It's definitely an introduction to personal identity, but also, isn't it that this personal identity is almost more important than the name of the person? Right? Telling that it comes from a disability activist who has quipped about how he wants to bring out a new kind of Barbie who will become a lawyer, and the Barbie's name will be Sue Your Ass Becky. So it's more important to tell that anecdote, that story, that funny story about this disability activist, rather than giving the name, because number one, most probably this name, he was not a renowned name, not a scholar in the discipline, but maybe Erica Rand is a name that needs to come with the scholarly approach, right? So it's a name. So it's all trying to approach the ethos of the reader, right? So where I need to give the name to make you feel that this is coming from a credible source, I'll give you the name. In a position where I need to connect with my readers by telling, see, this is coming from a disability activist, so you need to take this, I will tell that. So information it's there. It's not that she is hiding anything. The author is hiding anything. The name of the activist is not hidden. If you go to the footnote that comes along with 2, you will inevitably land up with the name, right? But where to give what, when to give the name, when to give the identity, when to give the story that comes with this citation, when to give the analysis, how much analysis to do, how much would you say, how much of satire or humor to build in your writing is what defines how persuasive you can become, right? And what is the difference of these paragraphs from the earlier ones? We like background building, the conversation. But here we can see the author trying to kind of do this a trial thingy, right? Putting an evidence, claiming, again an evidence, again a claim, again an evidence, again a claim, right? So can you see every paragraph has one claim and then an associated explanation, analysis, and then comes one section which is a piece of an evidence, right? Every paragraph has this. The next paragraph also, the paradox of Becky and Barbie and Becky, of course, is that the ultra-feminized Barbie is a target for sexual appropriation, both by men and beauty practices, while the disabled Becky escapes such sexual objectification of the potential cost of losing her sense of identity and the power as a feminine sexual being. Can you see a kind of repetition here? That's a question I have to ask you. This is basically a repetition, but not in the same way. And Brutus is an honorable man. Not in that same way, not the exact manner, but there is a repetition. I'll show you the repetition. Banishment for femininity can both be a liability and a benefit. So what the author has done is taken 3 full paragraphs to actually come back to this repetition, not in the same manner, like exact tautology, but saying now what has happened, now that this was a premise. This was a kind of a saying it aloud, using the evidences, analysis, slowly building it up, and finally coming to a position where she's fleshing it out, saying it in more explanatory manner. What is this paradox all about? Why is it a benefit? A benefit and a liability together is a paradox, right? That is the paradox that we began the idea with. That completely ousting the idea, the femininity aspect of Barbie is going to be a liability as well as an advantage. How is that's going to be? So what is happening here is I've showed you how there is still tautology. So can you see how persuasion is being built up? So sometimes you would not be able to build persuasion within one paragraph, but once that flow comes in with repetition of ideas, building the ethos, strategically using, why do I need to quote big names? You need to quote sometimes big names in the discipline, because if you do not quote them, you will not be, your voice won't be credible enough. It will not show that you have read enough to say certain things. Right? So it's to show your erudition, obviously, but then not in a decorative way, but to kind of deeply weave your writing into your evidences into your writing. If you're not able to do that, persuasion falls flat, because readers are very, very clever to understand where the loopholes are. Right? So this repetition that's happening through the entire paragraph is very, very interesting. Okay. So in the second excerpt, what did we see? We saw that there is evidences, but however, there is a variety of evidences that we have. We have images, we have examples, we have quotes. We also have close reading of certain quotes, and there are citations, strategically used citations. Sometimes there are names offered, sometimes there is a description of the author offered, and all of this has kind of woven together to build these evidence claim paragraphs, right? So this is the second most useful idea of paragraphs, body paragraphs that you would end up using in a persuasive essay is the evidence claim paragraphs. And these are very, very common in academia. I've showed you from the excerpt taken from a reading which is there in your syllabus, right? So these paragraphs can also draw in metaphors, raw data, whether you collect it from surveys, interviews, fieldwork, social experiments, and other pieces, and experiments, obviously, if it's a science one. So these pieces of evidence to prove a certain point, right? The last piece of my advice for today is whenever you're building these evidences, particularly when they are citations, pay attention to the grammatical part of your own sentence as well. Your citations should fit like a puzzle. They shouldn't be rugged edges to the citation. If for that you need to chop off certain sections from the citation and just take, when I say citation, I mean to say quotes, right? So when you need just one concept, which is 3 words, and it's okay to just use that 3 words, right? So you don't need the entire paragraph or entire sentence. Don't use it. But if you are using a bigger piece of quotation, be careful that the tense, the grammatical, it's congruous with your entire sentence. The sentence that you are writing, your analysis sentence, and the evidence part of it is congruous. The tense is okay, the voice is okay, the person is okay. So take all of that into your notice. Okay, pay attention to that. Next, please don't think that only quotes are evidences. Okay, we can have images, we can have metaphors. Again, close reading of quotes is essential to argumentation. Just putting out quotes out there it's a collage of quotations. Academic persuasive essays are not collage of quotations. They are explaining how to interpret the quotation for the reader. Because, as I said, do not leave your readers with too much of gap. The more gap you will leave your readers, whether it be your teachers or the world outside, the more they will be free to interpret it according to themselves. So as a writer, you have to handhold them. You have to kind of take them slowly from one argument to the next. The more freedom you give, the more they will go outside your grasp. And you want to do what? You want to persuade them, right? So they're not, and the last one is your transition words and phrases work as the thread which stitches your entire essay, right? So once you've written your entire essay, go back and edit it for just transition words. See, every sentence is connected to the next one. If there's an idea A and then the next sentence is an opposing idea B, then have you put a word which says that this is contrary to the earlier one, right? So things like this. Go back and just edit for transitions. If you want to make your writing persuasive, you have to end up giving edits for transitions. If you don't edit for transition, it will leave a lot of loopholes. Okay, so that's all. Then sums up everything that I had to say. If you have doubts, queries, even disagreements with whatever I said, which is absolutely okay, you can write me to in this mail, or you can also follow my work, which is also related to academic writing in these 2 platforms. I'll stop the sharing now, and yes.
Thank you, Poulomi. That was
okay. That's all. Questions yes. And also comments.
Yeah, I would like to invite students. I mean, we're done with the presentation. So if there's any question, anything that we could take 1 or 2 questions quickly. Anyone? But this was it was such a extensive presentation. It covered with so much clarity the concepts that we often overlook during our reading and writing practices. Even because we keep writing research essays. So I think all the concepts that you have explained in detail with examples is certainly very, very useful for all of us. So yeah, I think students, would be revisiting this again for their own clarity and, to build up arguments. But yes, I'm sure the technique of argumentation, the art of argumentation is something that was needed to be emphasized. And this presentation, did justice, to this particular topic. So thank you so much, Poulomi. I'm very grateful, for you to, come over here and, with such detailed slides, you have explained concepts so thoroughly. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Tanu, for giving me this opportunity to interact with your students. Thank you so much.
Yes. So Juhi says it looks easy to see debatable sentences, but hard to frame. Little tricks for this would be wonderful. Yeah.
That's why you need the mapping, right? When you are thinking about whether there's a debate in your research question or not, just map. Write the and the for, the statements. Write it down somewhere. Just jot the ideas. The moment you feel that, okay, I can't build this debate, all the points are going in the for or the against, there isn't two equal voices, that means it's not enough for you to, it's not worthy to take up as a research project and waste your time, because you most probably will get exhausted in a while or so. Right, Juhi? This is definitely something very important. Yes, Jayashree.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, we were talking about the use of quotations, right? So my question is, like, if I don't use any quotation and provide evidences just from the texts, would it be less appealing? I mean, I don't know. I rarely use quotations. Like, this is the personal thing.
When you say I use evidences from the text, how would you use it, Jayashree?
I mean, see, there is certain argument which I'm making. This thing is like this, and I would cite examples from the text.
The moment you say you're taking examples from the text, you are quoting it, right? And when I say quoting or taking, so you are basically not using, you can bring in evidences from the text in a multiple way. One is just like quote unquote, using this punctuation. The second is when you take huge chunks from the text and then you write, then also there is something called the block quote. Do you know that? Right? Your texts have a little piece there, the font is a little lesser, and then there are blocks. There's blocks of other pieces of text in the text that you're writing. So those are block texts. They don't have quotations, but they're still taking help of other texts. The other one, Jayashree, which possibly you are trying to point to, is paraphrasing or summarizing from the text, right? So you don't end up taking sentences ditto from the text, but what you are inevitably taking is the summary or the paraphrase of a certain episode or a certain argument that the text has said, and then you are building it. This is where plagiarism comes in. And I'm sorry, Tanu, but this would need another idea.
No, actually, I see, we...
No. Just let me finish this. I'll come to you. Okay. Just a moment. Jayashree, to make it clear, you are supposed to put that name of the author along with the year and the page of the text that you are quoting, even if you do not use the quote unquotes. Even if you are summarizing someone's argument, even if you are paraphrasing someone's idea, oh my God, she left. Okay, anyway, she can listen to that later on. So even if it's not, this is something again, possibly I missed mentioning, even if you're not putting anything in quotes, you have to end up acknowledging where you got your ideas from, right? So even if it is a paraphrase, even if it's taken from another source, without direct ditto, quote unquote, or block quotations, but the originator of the idea is not you, but someone else, and you're drawing that idea into your writing, you will have to give a citation. If you don't do that, that's plagiarism, right? This is one of the major confusions that students have. Okay. So Jayashree, I have answered your question, or you have more questions? if you're back.
No, actually, I lost my network. It's okay.
Yeah, I
Thank
lost
you.
the network, but I gave the answer. Listen to this later as well. Do you have any other question?
No, you know what? We quote certain people while writing our answers. I was talking about that. You know, if I'm thinking in a certain direction, so do I always need to quote somebody else who is thinking in the same direction? I mean, I don't know. We both are thinking in the same direction. So, is it necessary to add that person?
See, there's something called acknowledgement in academia, and there's a word for it that's called citation, right? So if somebody has thought about that idea prior to you and it is known in the academic discipline, in that particular discipline, then it makes your voice more strong to tell where that I am thinking about this idea, but then I'm not alone. There are also people who have thought about this before. Don't you think that just makes your thought even more strong to give people more reasons to believe you?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? When you say coffee is better than tea, when I just say it, you won't believe it. But then I suddenly start quoting, see, this is the scientific data that has shown that coffee is better than tea. This is the survey that has been done, and it shows that 7,000 people have taken coffee for these many hours and tea for these many hours, and these are the health benefits. So when I use all of that together, doesn't it just amplify my argument?
Yes, ma'am.
It does. There you go. This is why we always need to give evidences, or else everything will be just hypothesis, just proposition. That's what proposition is. When you're making a proposition in the introductions, you're not giving evidences. You're just giving ideas that could be true. But the moment you have placed it with your evidences, and the claiming and the evidence come like hand in hand, hand in glove with the analysis, it turns to be the proposition becomes the argument. Right? It becomes the core argument. It becomes the thesis statement. It becomes the core point in your entire essay, the moot point, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us with your words. Any more questions? Okay, I think we're done. With this, we have come to an end to the event. It was indeed a pleasure to have Dr. Poulomi with us today. We are very thankful to her for delivering the talks with exceptional clarity and insightful presentation. In both of her talks, we surely gained immense knowledge and a deeper understanding of a discipline helpful in shaping our career that lays before us as English honor graduates. On behalf of the team of Mitraksha, the English Literary Society of Kalindi, I would like to express a heartfelt gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Poulomi ma'am, all the teachers, society members, and our audience for their presence. We hope to continue hosting such enriching sessions in the future as well. Thank you again for lending us your ears. Now I would request all of you to please switch on your cameras for a picture.
Okay, yeah. So this is something which we look forward, after ending the session. Picture that reminds us of these events.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, I took the picture. Thank you.
You've taken the picture by not switching on your own camera, my dear. Anyways, yeah. Blessings and banes of virtual education. But yeah, you're all connecting because of this. So can't complain. But yeah, definitely meeting in person has many more perks. And some chai and biscuits as well.
Right. We hope to conduct more sessions, on different aspects of academic writing, and we get a chance to meet.
Absolutely, Tanu. Thank you so much. So should I log on?
Yes. Thank you so much, and please take care. Thank you everyone for staying. And
bye. you everyone for staying so long. I overshoot my time for a little. That I'm sorry for that, but I hope I bore you.
Very productive evening, so it's worth it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, bye bye.
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 Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.